What is going on, you guys? Hope you're having a great day so far. And today we're going to go ahead and get straight into it. I know your time is valuable. So, what we're going to be talking about today is 5 ways to diet more strategically without spending more time in the gym. This is super important because a lot of the clients we work with are career driven women. They are high stress women. They have big goals. They are goal getters. They do a lot. And with that comes a lot of stress. So, we don't have a lot of free time. We don't have a ton of time on our hands. So, oftentimes when we hear the advice, eat less, move more, we find ourselves in a bit of a plateau. And it's like, why is that? Why am I applying this, respected knowledge in the fat loss community about how to lose body fat and not seeing the results from my efforts? And when it comes to females who are high stress, this is something we got to go ahead and start with. So the thing that is important to understand here is it's not about effort. A lot of times when you think about it, people are tracking their food. They are under eating. They are training hard. They're doing high intensity exercise. They're doing a lot of the right things, but they're not seeing the results from their efforts. So why is that? And that is because when you are a busy individual, when you are a high achieving female, right? When you have big goals for yourself, that comes with a lot of stress. And it's important to understand that oftentimes there's this misconception that females are unresponsive, right? But the reality is we're very responsive. We're just responsive to our high stress lifestyle. So one of the things I always love to tell clients is that if you want your body to be a fat burning machine, then you need to treat it like one. So what does that mean? It means that oftentimes we will year round undereat. We will year round almost be malnourished. We will year round overtrain and push ourselves and have intense deadlines and barely sleeps and all these things. And then when we start to diet, we're like, why am I not responding? When we've done no work and no effort to focus on, right, making sure the systems that make up the metabolism are in a great spot to be that fat burning machine we want for ourselves. So when you go into a deficit, which tends to be a high stress season, right, we're restricting our calories intentionally, we're intentionally adding a lot more output. Sometimes that can just put us in a position where we feel so stuck because of the way our body is already trending to being a little bit low operating due to the demands we have on a daily basis. And that can be where we feel like, what the hell is going on, right? So the biggest thing here is a healthy body is a responsive body. So these are 5 different strategies that I personally implement with clients to maintain responsiveness amongst their chaotic lives and get a little bit more out of their efforts without just saying, hey, let's go train some more. So first things first is going to be carb cycling to maintain metabolic responsiveness. So the biggest thing here is a lot of people think that carb cycling needs to be this like super difficult thing or all this stuff. But the reason why this is so beneficial for women is, again, when you see, and if you've never heard the expression parasympathetic state, think parasympathetic is like calm, cool, collected, rest and digest. This is where the body's going to be healing. And then sympathetic is like fight or flight. A lot of us operate in like an internal fight or flight. And the problem with that is parasympathetic, like I said, that healing state, they call it rest and digest, right? That's where digestion is going to be its best, but they also call it feed and breathe, which means that your sex hormones are going to flourish and your internal health is going to flourish when stress is low. The problem is when we live very high demanding lifestyles, it can be hard, especially if our intent is to lose body fat, to add in more stress and see our body respond, like I said, like the fat burning machine we want for ourselves. So how does carb cycling play a role in this? The reason it is so important and so game changing, I would say, is because if you are just treating your diet as like one endless downhill climb of like, okay, let's drop food, let's push cardio, let's drop food, let's push cardio, right? Nonstop, and you're not seeing more from your efforts, oftentimes your body needs to be supported rather than it does need to be pushed. There's kind of this point where you think that like, when it comes to dieting, you want to make sure you're getting like your maximum return of investment. And there comes a point where you start to push too hard, to which you're going to see less from your efforts, even if you're doing all the right things. So personally, the way I like to structure this is there's a couple different ways. I do like high days on training days and low days on rest days, but I also sometimes understand that we can't always commit to training days and non-training days if our schedule doesn't allow. So another one I like to run is 3 low, 1 high, or 5 low, 2 high, right? And with that, strategically, what's good is a lot of times those higher carb days can take place on the weekend. And the difference there is, yes, obviously a lot of people overeat on weekends, but it's about being strategic about it. We're not just eating whatever we want and going crazy over everything else. We're just having a little bit more carbs on that day. Normally, the difference between carbs that I like to run with is going to be about 40 to 60 grams just to kind of get the desired effect. And what this does is it makes sure our metabolism isn't just endlessly down regulating as we're going through this process. And carbohydrates are so important overall as our body's main source of energy. We're also going to have more effective workouts, but we're also going to keep our thyroid in a good spot because carbs are so important for that. So it allows us to, again, be a little bit more strategic and without just thinking, okay, the answer is just continue digging deeper. So next one on here, prioritize nutrient-dense foods over ultra-processed options. This one, right, we all know is that like if it fits your macros, right, it's important to not kind of trend towards, right, especially when you're in a dieting phase. And the reason being is because if you are in a dieting phase and you're intentionally lowering food, you're lowering fats, you're lowering carbs, right, you're making these adjustments, you don't want that to just correlate to like worse and worse food quality and like less and less nutrients, right? So something I personally recommend to clients is eating like 90-10 during a dieting phase, especially on days in their control. Obviously, it won't always be perfect, but this is going to allow you to get a little bit more bang for your buck. And again, give your body the nourishment and nutrients it needs to maintain that responsiveness, right? The other thing here that people fail to understand is that there's something called the thermic effect of food. And even though I'm not saying it's just thousands and thousands and thousands of calories, it does make a world of difference in terms of you pushing harder, right, to see a little bit more body fat loss, or you just supporting your body better and being able to see a little bit more body fat loss, right? Instead of a cardio session, let's just say cleaner food sources. Because when our body is, again, supported and nourished, it's going to be more responsive, right? And a big thing to understand is protein and fiber specifically are those sources that are the highest thermic effect of food, which means if you were to consume a bunch of processed fiber sources and processed protein sources versus actual whole foods, you would net actually more calories from those more processed food sources as a result of making those swaps. So that's where food quality is so, so crucial. Third one, optimize internal health to improve fat loss efficiency. So this is huge, especially at state. So one of the things we do in one of our essential phases is a restorative phase. The reason why we do this is we like to support the systems of the metabolism. So when you think thyroid function, when you think sex hormones, when you think adrenals, when you think digestion, these things all make up your metabolism. And if these things have issues, then you're going to see that translate into you needing to dig deeper to diet. So there's two different options here. One, obviously, we're talking about how to diet more effectively. So what this would look like is utilizing your labs and specifically supporting the things that are problematic on there while you're going through a deficit. Our personal approach is we love to focus on a restorative phase, which is basically a lab-led reverse before we go into more of our physique optimization phase, which is our dieting phase. And that allows us to make sure these are not issues we're going to run into later, right? How many times, and this is so common for many females, we go through reverse, we think it's going to be transformative, and then we actually get back into our dieting phase and we still don't see a response, right? We went through all that time of bumping up food and we went through all that effort of lowering cardio and doing the right things, right? But it wasn't enough because just increasing food isn't going to fix your sex hormones, right? Or fix the reasons why you aren't able to lose body fat. And that is where being a little bit more intentional with your specific biology can really help here. So for example, if I know a client has Hashimoto's or has, let's say, hypothyroidism, right? I want to intentionally support the thyroid. I want to manage stress. I want to make sure digestion is good because these are things that ultimately negatively impact thyroid and cause you to struggle to lose body fat, right? The thyroid is one of those number one mechanisms that's going to be like thrown off here. The other two is going to be one, blood sugar regulation, and then obviously digestion is huge. And these are very common things females struggle with, right? When you see feeling very cold all the time or hair loss, that's a thyroid issue. When blood sugar, right? A lot of anxiety, swings in between meals, feeling fatigued. A lot of that is blood sugar. A lot of like puffiness is blood sugar. Digestion, right? If you're bloated, if you're constipated, those things all impact your ability to lose body fat, right? So a lot of times we try to focus so much on like, this is a health issue and this is a fat loss issue, but those are the same issues. So when you approach it that way and think, okay, instead of thinking like, how hard can I dig deep, right? Like how hard can I push? And more so of how much can I support my body so I can get more from my efforts? That's where instead of going and having to do cardio and cardio and cardio and pushing as hard as possible, you're able to get a little bit more even from doing a little bit less. And that's where strategy is so important. So that way it doesn't cost you your entire life and your well-being and your health to see the efforts and effects that you're looking for here, right? Next one is going to be using lower intensity movement to increase output without increasing stress. So like I said, when we're talking to and like the clients I'm working with, they have a lot of responsibilities. Maybe they're real estate agents, maybe they're nurses, maybe they're lawyers, right? Maybe they're entrepreneurs, right? Whatever is going on, they need to make sure they are not adding to their stress bucket. So if you've never heard of a stress bucket is basically this bucket over here, and everything goes in it. Financial stress, personal stress, work stress, the stress of like long hours or late nights. And if we're adding to that as like higher intensity exercise and eating way too low and overtraining and all these things, that bucket will start to overflow into other areas. So we want to be as methodical about our stressors as possible. This comes down to things like instead of over caffeinating and letting your dieting phase be some super insane stressful season, doing what we can to manage that stress, right? Because if we can keep stress a little bit lower, then we can oftentimes, right, see more from those same efforts. Anything related to stress, adrenals, cortisol is going to cause you to downregulate in those areas I've mentioned, right? We're going to see when stress is high, blood sugar be off. We're going to see thyroid be a little bit lower. We're going to see sex hormones be a little bit more depleted. So again, we're trying to not add to that bucket. So this looks like rather than you going and doing a HIIT class, let's focus on a higher step goal. Let's focus on lower intensity exercise. And obviously that doesn't sound as sexy, but do you want it to seem like an intense workout, or do you want it to actually be an effective workout that is getting you more bang for your buck? And if you are someone who, let's say, you work a little bit more of a desk job and you can't necessarily get on a walking pad, that's a-okay. Then totally fine to do more of just LISS, lower intensity, steady state, incline walking, things like that. But if you have the opportunity to get on a walking pad to move more throughout the day, I promise you, I have a client, specifically Stacy, who has lost over 70 pounds, and we've never done any assigned cardio other than a daily step goal. And that is how effective it can be. So just keep that in mind, that a lot of what you've been taught when it comes to diet culture and what's required to see the body of your dreams doesn't take into account your body and the amount of stress you're already under. And then the fifth one, which I've kind of led with here, managing stress and sleep to prevent metabolic downregulation. So this is where I was saying before that we're already in a situation and we already live a lifestyle that we see these things take a little bit of a hit, right? We see sex hormones tend to be a little bit lower. We see cortisol tend to be a little bit higher, right? We feel this. So when we go into a dieting phase, which is a phase that demands more from our body, is a little bit more stressful, we want to make sure we're supporting it so we can see the best response possible. So this looks like restorative sleep, making it a non-negotiable 8 hours. That doesn't sound like something's feasible for you, but I promise you, I would always rather a client have a consistent sleep schedule than I would them be training 5 days a week. Most of my clients are only training 3 to 4 days a week in the gym, and they have 3 to 4 cardio sessions as well. And that's because, again, a healthy body is a responsive body, a de-stressed body is a responsive body, right? So sleep is one of those things that's a non-negotiable. Oftentimes, the thing with dieting phases is we see them as a season that it's like, let's make this as stressful as possible, and we'll be like more responsive. And that is like the lie that we fall into. So for example, you'll see someone who's like, oh, I'm going to do berries in the morning, and then I'm going to go to the gym at night, and then I'm going to go for a run, and I'm not going to eat today, and I'm going to drink 2 Ghost energy drinks. And then they're not seeing any results, even though they're running themselves into the ground. So it's important to understand we want to find that sweet spot where we're pushing hard, but we're not pushing hard enough to start to see this cascade of effects that's going to cause us to not only not be able to keep up with it, but feel like shit and still not see the most bang for our buck, for lack of a better term. So the biggest thing here is it's not about, intensity or pushing as hard as you can. It's about alignment and taking into account where you're starting from and what your lifestyle already looks like. So if you have any questions, feel free to touch base and reach out. But other than that, I hope this was helpful.